Hi, everyone. Happy to have you in the locker room with me today. I'm Alan Locher. Emmy Award-winner Courtney Hope is my guest today. Courtney joined The Young and the Restless in 2020 as Sally Spectra, a talented fashion designer seeking a new start in Genoa City. She first brought Sally to life on The Bold and the Beautiful back in 2017, a role inspired by her aunt, portrayed by the late Darlene Conley. This year, Courtney received the Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Drama Series, having previously been nominated for the same award during her time on B&B. She won, beyond her roles in Daytime, Courtney has made memorable guest appearances on Transparent, Bones, NCIS, Criminal Minds, CSI Miami, Grey's Anatomy, and so much more. She is an avid fitness enthusiast. She has worked as a trainer, certified nutrition coach, and has been a proficient competitive dancer since the age of 5. Please help me welcome Emmy Award winner Courtney Hope to the locker room. Hi, Courtney.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Well. You are so welcome. Congratulations on that Emmy win.
Thank you. It's super exciting.
Well, take me back to June 7th. What do you remember about hearing your name called?
Oh my gosh. I remember the name, and then I remember thinking, oh my gosh, don't forget anybody. Like, don't forget to thank anyone. I kind of went straight into that mode. And I hugged my brother. I remember that. It was so cool to have him there with me. But yeah, it was, oh my gosh, such a whirlwind. I'm glad that thank goodness for television and recordings. I got to actually go back and watch it and see it, because I kind of just blacked out, but in the best possible way. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
That is great that you can go back and see it and go, oh, that's what I said.
Yeah, exactly. I know my mom at one point was like, there was someone from another show that said something, and she was like, what'd she say to you? And I was like, I have no idea. I was like, and I went back and I looked, I turned and I smiled, and I realized I was like, oh, I just said, oh my gosh. But it was so funny. It was all a blur, but a great blur. Yeah.
I love that. Well, your speech was so beautiful. Talk about the storyline itself. Sally learning she had lost the baby, what it meant to you to tell that story.
Mm-hmm. It meant everything to me to tell that story. It was so important that I told it as best I could, that I could be, the vessel, the open space for the story to be told. I witnessed my family, and me personally also, I lost my brother when I was younger. And so I saw a family lose a child and what that looks like. And then I've had friends lose children. I've had friends have stillbirths and people that I know at large. And I just really wanted to encompass what that looks like. And I know grief looks different to everyone. Everyone shows up differently in that space. And so in that moment when I was filming it, I just thought, okay, I've kind of added as much nuance as I can, and whatever happens, happens. I just was more focused on fighting to save her, even though she wasn't there. It was that feeling of but no, and what that world looks like. And it's still changing for Sally. I mean, that is something that never goes away. You just integrate it into your life, and your life looks different from that point forward.
Well, not funny, but it's happening on Y&R with Sharon right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I didn't realize, the personal connection for you and losing your brother.
Mm-hmm.
Did that make it more difficult, or did it help bring something to your performance, do you think?
I think it brought a sense of urgency to tell the story as authentically as possible, and a responsibility to also tell it from the eyes of people that have been through it. Because, like I said, everyone is different. In that situation, it's I witnessed multiple adults deal with it very differently, right? There's no right or wrong way to go through grief. And so for me, and then I was the little sister in it, right? So that was very different too. But coming from a parental perspective, that was different. I've never had that experience. So, just really walking in other people's shoes and finding that responsibility to say, that's what that's why I love to do what I do, is to tell the stories and to kind of peek behind the curtains of the moments that people have privately in their home or that they don't want to talk about. And I find that responsibility to bring that to the public, to bring that to, you know, the world at large, whoever chooses to view it. And so, yeah, it was just more this responsibility that like, I just want people to know that they're heard and they're seen, and that, you know, it's gonna come out in multiple ways, you know, hurt, anger, gosh knows, you know, so many different ways.
You know, those losses in our lives stay with us forever, and it does come and go. And you dedicated your win to anyone who lost a child, which now I understand why, you know, that's so important. And did you hear from people and you know, while you were doing this story?
Oh yeah, I heard from thousands of people, and it was beautiful to see their vulnerability with me because they don't know me, and to see that, men and women, but also to see it with each other. Like I really saw it on my Instagram. Their comments were like, you know, sometimes like 30, 40 comments deep with each other, just being like, I support you, or I went through this, or, you know, this is how I got through this, or, you know, I'm here for you if you need anything. And that made me happier than anything, because that's what I want, is to create that community where people can just love each other and be honest and say like, hey, like I went through this and it was hard, or like I'm not okay right now, or you know, because people are at different stages, right? And it's so important to look back and hold your hand out to someone else that might need it, you know. So yeah, I did hear from a lot of people, and it was
I love that you said that, because I do feel it's really special in this daytime community where people come together and share those stories.
yeah.
I know, you know, so many people have a difficult time with death and expressing condolences or attending funerals, but you know, those messages, you know, like I know losing my parents, you know, getting those messages from friends and family, and it is really comforting. So I love that your fans were doing that with each other and supporting each other.
Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, I still struggle sometimes when someone around me loses someone. It's like, what do you say? You know, like you're in my thoughts and prayers, or if you need anything. And it's like, and I know some people, I've seen some people get upset and be like thoughts, and but it's like, well, what do you say? It's like the fact that they're stepping up and opening up themselves to say, I see you. That's literally what they're saying, is I see you. Even if it's like they don't find the right words, you know, they're there and they're showing up. And I think that that's what's most important for us as a community, is to just show up. You know, sometimes we don't have all the right words to say, but we're here.
Absolutely. Well, going back to that Emmy night, how fun was it for you and Michelle to both, what did that make it extra special?
Yes, it definitely did. I think she is a phenomenal actress. I've always thought that. And so to be standing next to her was like a pinch me. I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. I think she's crazy. I crazy talented. Hold on, crazy talented. And finish my sentence. What I was going to say is, it's so funny. It's crazy to me that like, that Sally and Phyllis have this like rivalry, and then that we were both kind of like standing there. You know, obviously different storylines, but I thought, gosh, this is so cool, because she was one of the first people I was working with on Y&R when they had me with Jack, and so. Yeah, I just think she's fantastic, and it was cool to be standing next to her.
I love that. Well, take me back to Texas. What were you like as a child?
Very talkative. Very talkative. My mom locked herself in the room a couple times. It was like, Mommy just needs a break. And I'm like, but no, I was very, very talkative, very outgoing, very always dancing, always moving, always like high energy. But I love to learn. I love to study. I love to be creative. So I was never bored. I was always keeping myself busy with something, or using my dad's video camera to create skits, or talk to myself like I was interviewing someone. I don't know. My parents, they got a lot from me, but like, I wasn't a bad kid. I just was like always doing something or saying something, or like, look at me, watch me, I'm here. Look what I've created. Yeah,
And
but
where did your
it's fun.
love of dance begin?
I don't know. I feel like I just like came out that way. No, I feel like I might have, but my dad danced. Like my dad loves to dance, and he also picked up dancing in his like early 30s too. And like, so I do think that that was also a big influence because I would come home from school and he would be like upstairs with his tap shoes or like dancing in front of the mirror. They created a whole dance room for me upstairs. So it was like the whole room was mirrored with like a dance floor in it. There was gym equipment that my dad would use, but and then I did tumbling for a little bit. So I had like my tumble mat and my balance beam for a little bit. And so I think that's where it came from. And then, yeah, we would just dance, my family, all of us. We just all loved to just like groove. And then my older brother, Danny, the one that passed away, was a break dancer. And so I think that really thrust me even more. Like he was a great break dancer, like would spin on his head and like all this stuff. And he taught me how to do the worm. And like, so it kind of was like a family thing that I just fell in love with.
That's funny. I think I fell in love with dance because of my sister. She's 5 years older than me, and just family functions and her taking me to the dance floor. But I love,
Yeah,
it's my, one of my absolute favorite things to do, just
I love
dance.
that. I love that.
So I love that your brother, you have that, and you'll always have that because you'll remember that. Where did acting come in? Where did the love for?
The first memory I have is I was around 3 or 4 years old and I was sitting watching Barney. And I loved Kathy. She's from Texas. And I was like always hoping to like run into her. She did end up coming to my dance studio one day and I like about keeled over. I was so excited. There was a scene where it was Barney's birthday and she didn't get him a present and she had her little teddy bear. And so at the last minute, she didn't know what to do. So she gave Barney her teddy bear and Barney was like, you don't have to do this. And she's like, this is important to you. And she was like, no, like you're more important to me than the bear. And I want to give you the bear. And I remember being affected by it at that age, super young, and being like, I want to do that. I didn't know it was acting. I didn't know what it was. I just knew there was someone in a box on a screen that made me feel. And so I just told my parents, I want to be an actor. I want to be an actor. So they got me in acting classes when I was like 4, 5 years old, with an acting coach there that we still text. She like, it's so funny. Like she's so great. Manning. She's wonderful. And yeah, and she like really helped me find my way in that arena. And then I did some like modeling, but again, like I said, I was hyper. So when my mom went to get me an agent, I was like under the table, on the chair, like all over the place. And my mom just kind of went like, you know what? I'm going to let her be a kid. We'll relook at this in a few years. But she allowed me to keep going to acting classes. And then when I was like 10-ish, it was my birthday. My mom was like, what do you want for your birthday? I was like, an agent. So that's how I got an agent. And my parents I was definitely not thrust into it. My parents were like, my dad did some acting in high school, but like, at his school. But yeah, I was the first. I don't know. I just caught the bug and never let it go.
Is that what led your family to California?
Yeah. Yeah, wow. It was. I went to, in Austin, there was a manager that was there doing a workshop and I went there. My mom drove me down there from Dallas. And she just basically said, I would love to sign you, but if you want to do this, you got to be in LA. And thankfully, my dad was getting ready to retire and my mom was traveling for work and my brother was switching schools. So I'm very thankful that they were all in a place to support me in that. And so, yeah, I just...
That is quite the supportive group right there.
They definitely are. And I'm so I couldn't have asked for a better family. They're so wonderful and very hands-on too. Like I had a lot of friends come out here and their parents would just like get an apartment and leave them and leave. My parents were like, no, you're still a kid. And so either my mom stayed with me or if my mom, like I said, was traveling for work and my dad was still finishing up his job and getting ready to sell the house and everything, my grandma would come stay with me. So I was never alone. Like I always had someone here taking me to auditions. And I went to a performing arts school in Texas, actually, with like 350 gymnasts from WOGA. which is where, so Nastia Lukin, I grew up with her. I was just thinking about this today when I saw the Olympics post. Carly Patterson was in the year above me, and Nastia Lukin was in my grade. And so we grew up with each other, and we still chat sometimes on Instagram. But yeah, it was weird. Like I would see like gymnasts doing handstands down the hallway. Like I felt like I was in a circus school sometimes. It was so funny. Like there were so many gymnasts that were there. But there was like actors, race car drivers, tennis players. Yeah, it was cool. But they allowed you to do school from afar is what I was getting at.
I just love your parents. They saw something, they believed in you, and that's a gift that parents can give their child.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm thankful that they were in a place to be able to do it, because I feel like there's some parents that want with everything in their heart to do it, and they just don't have the means to do it. So I'm very thankful. And yeah, now they're all still here. They live like 25 minutes from me, and they're all enjoying their life. I hope. I'm like, sorry, you're welcome. I'm not sure, but we're all here. But actually, because my older brothers and my half brothers and sisters are in San Francisco. So it actually worked out because my dad's now closer to them, and they can just drive down and see my dad. So
that's awesome. You mentioned this teacher. Who were some of your mentors along the way?
Oh my gosh, I have had so many. Definitely Margot Manning. My fifth grade teacher, her name was Mrs. Willett. She really, I don't know, when you're younger and you just have that one teacher that you're like, she believes in me. That was her. And my counselor, Mrs. Cluck. I don't know why those two like really stick out to me. But as far as acting coaches go in general, like I've had, Ivana Chubbuck was great for, a huge period of my life. She was my coach. And then Diana Castle has been my mentor for the longest time. I love her. She's amazing. She just is a human. She's so insightful, and she's just a beautiful woman inside and out. She's been great. I've been working with her for like 10 years now. And then just people in my life, I love like looking up to, there's so many people that I'm friends with that I look up to, mentors. There's a woman, she was my therapist for a little bit, and now she's more like a life coach. She's beautiful. Her name's Susan, and I adore her. And it's just nice to have people that I love to like look up to, and that I follow. And I don't know. I'm so inspired by people. Yeah, learn from. And my parents, they are big mentors for me. Absolutely. They're wonderful. And my dad, like, he's so insightful, and he's got so much wisdom. It's like, he's like Aristotle in a bottle. Like, it's crazy. Sometimes he's like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wow.
What a great description.
Yeah.
What a great description. Was Texas Walker Ranger your first paying on camera?
Yes, it was. I was so excited. Yeah, it was a small role, but I was so excited to be there. And we got to meet Chuck, and we actually got to eat lunch with them. Funny story, actually. So like my family and we got to eat with them, and they gave us steak, but they had plastic forks and knives. And, we were like nervous because it's like my first gig, and it's, Chuck Norris. And yeah, I remember the fork anyway broke off. The prongs of the fork broke off in the steak, and then it went flying. And like my family and it was like one of those moments where like you're trying to be cool, and like everything that could possibly go wrong goes wrong. But it made for a good laugh. My parents and we laugh at that sometimes. We're like, do you remember how we were like fumbling all over ourselves? Like, yeah, we've been here before. But yeah, that was my first job.
That's great. And then at 17, Grey's Anatomy, playing a bitchy cheerleader. That had to be fun at 17.
Yeah, it was super fun. I remember the line being like, "You can still take you to prom, even though your face and your butt's all messed up." Like, I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, it's so stereotypical cheerleader, the mean cheerleader, but it was fun. And it's fun looking back too, because my voice is so high. I'm like, you don't realize like when that changes, even as a girl. But yeah, that was
talk about an iconic show.
Oh yeah, I was very blessed. I feel like I have been very blessed in general to do. I always wanted to like do Disney and Nickelodeon, and I would like test for things and be on pin for things for those shows. But I was always getting like the NCIS, the CSI Miami, the Grey's Anatomy, the Bones, like that was where I landed, was like the procedural, the adult dramas, the movies that were that way. So I was like, you know, it was like the universe had a different
Yeah, you
direction
can't.
for me.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't, you know, there's no rhyme or reason in this business, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it's been cool too, because I remember one of my first big roles, what my first role on TV was Joan of Arcadia. And I was 15 and I only said E. E. Cummings. I had one line and I like start crying and run out of the room because I'm like in love with my counselor and I think he's like someone else. I don't know. And so I run out. But the director on that, Bethany Rooney, when I booked NCIS, I walked in the room and she was the director on it. And that was like a decade later. And so it was so cool to see that. And then she cast me in that and we talked about it. Like, I'm like, you booked, like, cast me in my first TV show ever. And so it was cool to like be in that world and have that moment, because, you know, directors kind of guest on a lot of shows, but to have her have that moment, and I look up, she's a great director. She's a great director. So that was really cool to have that moment. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, do you remember me? She's like, yeah, I do, from like 10 years ago. She's like, you know, broke down crying. I said, yes, I did. I was like doing everything I could. They were like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm fine. So.
Well, 7 years ago, you joined The Bold and the Beautiful. What do you remember about your screen test and audition for that?
I remember being very much so at peace. I had hit this weird stride where I was on pin for like 15 shows. It was like me and someone else, me and someone else, me and someone else, me and someone else, like recurring role on Stitchers, or, you know, and I had tested for General Hospital the March before. So December is when I booked Bold. In March, I had tested for GH, and it was like, I was like always the bridesmaid, never the bride, you know, like kind of that situation. And I had just, I know this is so silly, but like I had just come to peace with like being like, you know what, at least I'm doing what I love. Like eventually it's going to work out. It has to. And so I had just signed up to get certified in Pilates because I was like, you know what, I'm going to take a different career path. And like, I love what I'm doing at Cardio Bar. So I'm going to expand on it and go teach Pilates. So I just gotten my Pilates certification. And I remember when I got the role, I was at Universal Studios in Hogsmeade in Harry Potter world there, land, Harry Potter land. And I remember I got the audition and I saw it and it was like, she's a designer and she, you know, I didn't know anything about her. And it said, she's like a Miley Cyrus vibe. And I was like, ooh, fun. And so I couldn't wait to get home and like just start playing around and working on it. So yeah, by the time I got to my screen tests and everything, I remember sitting there and a friend of mine actually was also testing with me. Beautiful, wonderful actress. And I just sat there and thought, you know what, God, like whoever's meant to get it is going to get it. And I prayed for every girl that walked in because I just wanted them to have a good time. I wanted to have a good time because I had gotten to this point where I'm like, if I go home and just teach Pilates, like I'm happy. Like it's fine. Like I love what I do. And so, yeah. And then I was visiting my best friends. My old roommates had moved out and I was visiting them in Atlanta when I got the call. So that was really cool because I'd lived with them for a while and they saw me, you know, book a few things, but like be that always the bridesmaid, never the bride. And so it was really cool to be with them all when I booked it. And I just was like, I remember a couple times that night, I was like, that did happen, right? like I am going to shoot the show. So yeah. And then the last thing I'll say about it is my phone, I was just deleting a bunch of photos and videos. And I found a video of me, my first day on Bold, driving into the lot and talking to my phone and saying like, today's my first day on Bold. Like, I'm really excited. I'm excited to see what God has in store for me. Thank you so much. Like, and I don't even remember making the video, but it was really cool to see it because there was just this light, you know, this like giddiness that I was like, wow, like, I don't ever want to forget that. I don't ever want to forget how excited I was.
That video, I hope.
Yeah, I definitely did.
I hope so. Who did you screen test with?
I screen tested with Pearson, who was the original Thomas.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and it was kind of funny because we actually had mutual friends and I didn't know. So the day of my screen test, that night, a friend of mine was having her birthday party, and I had something going on where I couldn't go, and I was like, oh, I would have loved to have come, but I couldn't come. And so then the next day I was like looking, you know, on Instagram at the photos, and he was there. And I remember having one moment of being like, oh, like maybe I should have gone. Like, not that that would have made a difference, but like maybe like I could have talked to him a little more about like if I test again, like I don't know. And then I just kind of went, whatever, God, it is what it is. And then I ended up getting it. So I told him, it was kind of funny. Like we didn't even know we had mutual friends. I'd never seen him before. But yeah, it was good. It was fun to play and to, I remember Brad Bell asking me like, do you love like being like the good girl? And do you like, you know, having like fun and being quirky and funny? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And he's like, and do you love like being, you know, sassy and bitchy and whatever? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, and he's like, so you like doing both of them? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, okay. And I remember thinking like, and that's exactly Sally's spectrum. You know, she's been both. So I get his question now.
Did you watch Darlene at all?
I did. After I found out who it was, because I didn't know it was Sally Spectra. That was not in the breakdown. It just said Miley Cyrus, and I wore like a sparkly top with space buns and a and a fur overcoat. Like I went fishnets. I was like full Miley, like, you know, bangers album, like full on. And so after I found out, then I saw who it was. And yeah, they sent me a bunch of stuff too. Like they were like, this is who you're going after. So it was really important to me to embody a lot of who she was, but then slowly integrate who I was into it. That was really important to me.
I love that. PJ said, I loved Sally in the fashion world on B&B with the fashion showdowns. I also liked her relationships with Thomas and Wyatt. And Angie said, I especially liked her with Wyatt. Did you have a preference on Thomas or Wyatt?
I loved both of them, but I loved Wyatt. I think they didn't give Thomas and Sally too much. Like it was very young and very like innocent in the beginning. It was Sally's first relationship. And so I think it was very like, it was just very young, and then he was gone. But Wyatt, there was something about Wyatt that I felt like there was a really good banter between like, well, Darren in general is just funny. So like working with him, you're going to get that like humorous banter. And so I think we really found a good balance between having serious conversations about, you know, life and moving in and, you know, shooting his dad, like all that, you know, normal conversations. Right. And then like balancing it with levity of like being humorous. And we just had a really good chemistry balance back and forth. And he's a great actor. And, but I loved working with Pearson Thomas as well. It was fun, but it was very short lived. So I feel like Wyatt was like a couple years where we could really like settle into it.
Dive in.
Yeah.
Veronica says, welcome, Courtney from Atlanta. Loved you on B&B. Carry on, the Spectra legend. Congrats on your Emmy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Were you a soap fan at all before you joined B&B? Did you grow up?
Yes, I loved All My Children. I was a huge All My Children fan. My nanny growing up watched it. My grandmother watched General Hospital, and I would watch a little bit with her, but I really got into All My Children back with like Babe and JR and Jamie and that whole, you know, Bianca and Kendall, like that whole group. And I just with like Greenlee and Ryan. And it's funny now, like being in the world and like, you know, seeing, like, you know, Cameron Matheson and being like, that's so funny. Like, you know, or my first days on B&B, like seeing Jacob Young, and I was like, and Torsten, and I'm standing there and I had a scene and I was like so nervous, but I'm like, I was nervous because I watched them when I was younger, and, you know, in my mind they were like, and they are iconic. And so, and now being on the show, like Peter Bergman and Missy and like Liz, and it's just wild. Like, it's just wild. I'm like the little girl, but my nanny and I have actually talked about this because she was the one that got me into it, and we're still super close. And it's just cool for her to like see experience because she introduced me to it, and now I'm involved in that way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Was there someone at B&B who took you under their wing when you got there to help?
So the first days, John McCook was like, first time I came down the stairs, he was right there. And it was cool because I knew Molly, his daughter. And so I thought it was really sweet. He said, hi, I'm Molly's dad, as opposed to I'm John McCook, Eric Forster. So that was really cool. It like allowed a human experience to evolve. He was very, very much so, wonderful, still is. Him, and then my Spectra gang, Patrika, even though she was new to the show, she'd been in the soap world before. So she very much so took me under her wing, just in general on how soaps work and like what I need to focus on. But everyone on that show was really warming and welcoming. I went to Australia very quickly from when I got on the show, like probably within like 6-8 weeks, I was in Australia. So I hadn't worked with anyone and I was so nervous. The only person I knew was Pearson because I'd been working with him, because the Spectras I'd been working with, but they didn't go. And so I remember sitting in Australia, going to our fan event on the bus, feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome. Like people are like, Sally. And I'm like, me? Like, I'm like, like I hadn't even aired yet. But like also watching the dynamics of the cast, like remember Torsten at one point looked over and he was like, you're really quiet. And I'm thinking that's hysterical because like I'm
like no one says that.
No, but I am when I'm in a new situation because I like to observe. And Jackie has since been like, oh yeah, you have no poker face. She's like, you could sit in the room and you were just literally looking at everyone and it was written on your face like how you were feeling about all of it. I'm like, that's good to know because I definitely
you
don't.
must have been pinching yourself just being across the world in Australia, like shortly after arriving there.
Yeah, it was a wild experience. And, we had to have like fake names at the hotel because, they didn't want people to come up to our room. Like, I was like, what is happening? It was wild. And fans were like out front and we were filming there too. So it was like, yeah, it was just, I could not have, I like felt like I hit a gold mine, and I did hit a gold mine. They're amazing. Brad's wonderful. He treats everyone, he accommodates everyone so beautifully on the show, like a really good balance between like, yeah, you're here to work, but let's live a little. Like he's really great at that.
I love that. I love that. How did the transition from B&B to Y&R come about?
So I don't know the logistics behind the scenes of how Sally ended up faking it, but originally I know that there was like, oh, she might be dying of something, and then it came along like a few months later, like, oh no, it's not real. And I'm like, okay. So after that happened, it was kind of this feeling of like, well, I don't really know how to come back from this, at least in this moment. Like I've kidnapped someone, like to a radiator, but you know what I mean? Like I've kidnapped someone and like, I don't know. And so Brad called me and just said like, hey, we're going to step away for a second and like give Sally some space to kind of, get back on her feet and focus on a couple other storylines. And I was like, okay, and what happens, I understand. And so I remember my last days filming were the hospital scenes, actually, when the Emmy that I was nominated for in 2020, they were those scenes. And it just like, it was hard. I love everyone there. And, but I don't know. I just felt like I was going to be okay. Like there was not one moment where I was nervous. I knew that it wasn't anything that I did. It just was kind of the way that the cards were unfolding. And so I remember going home and I remember crying, being like, I just don't feel like I'm done with Sally. Like, I feel like I'm not done. I don't know. There's so much more I can do, but it was like out of my control. It was weird. Like I didn't realize how invested I was in her and her life. And so, yeah, one day I was outside and I was talking to my uncle. This was like 3-4 weeks later. And my uncle, he lives in Austin and he's like so supportive. He watches the show every day. But he's also big in like, the music scene too. And so he's such an entrepreneur creator in his mind. And he's like, let's think of a script. We could write a script. We can figure. And so he was kind of spitballing. And as I was talking to him, this feather flew and it was like going like this right in front of me. And I just looked at the feather, and I just had this feeling that I was like, it's going to be okay. And I said to him, I said, yeah. I said, we should do that. And I said, but I'm going to be okay. And he said, I know you are. And then I hung up the phone. I took 3 steps towards inside, and my phone rang, and it was my agent. He was like, question, how would you feel about going on Y&R? And I was like, what? He was like, yeah, they want to bring Sally over to Y&R. So it was like just that quick. So yeah, I left. My last scenes on B&B were like the very beginning of August. And by the beginning of October, I was on Y&R. Yeah, I had a meeting with them at Y&R, and they said, we'd love to bring you over. And I'm like, yeah, please. That's great.
And did you say your first scenes were with Peter? Or you?
My first scenes were with Tracy Bregman. So that was really cool because she knew Darlene. And so I totally picked her brain. Oh, and going back, she's also a big mentor of mine. She's been wonderful. I look up to her. She's like a rock star. Literally, she looks like one, and she is
phenomenal. Yeah. I grew up watching, I mean, I'm an As the World Turns and Guiding Light, but my mother watched all CBS, and I grew up watching Danny and Cricket and Tracy and all of that.
Yeah, she's iconic. My first scenes were with her, and it was funny because one of our first scenes together, we were in the middle of talking, we were across the table, and she leaned forward, and her earring, for no reason, she didn't touch it. It flew off and flew at me, and in the middle of the scene. And so we kind of like looked around, and she just, when we went back to my room, she's very spiritual, and she was like, that was Darlene. Like, this is going to be good.
I knew. Wow.
That stuff. She's like, that was Darlene. So yeah, ever since then, we've just been really close. And yeah, and then it unfolded working with Summer, and then Peter, and Phyllis, and, or you know what I mean. I'm mixing up their real names in there.
Was it an easy transition going across the hall?
It was easy because everyone's just so great, but it was difficult because one, it was COVID. So like I couldn't really get to know anyone, we're like in our rooms when you're not working. So I didn't really have an opportunity to like really interact with many people. And I was nervous, there was this pressure of like, they just brought me from this show to here. I hope they think they made a good choice. Like there was definitely a moment where I was like, I hope this works out. But at the same time, I just was so grateful to be there, and everyone has been wonderful since day one. They've been so great. I want to plug my computer in. I just realized it's unplugged. Yeah, it's a very easy transition.
Everyone, is congratulating you on your Emmy. They love you in Genoa City. Everyone's excited. What's going to happen when you find out the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, this week was pretty tense between the 4 of you.
Yeah, it definitely, it's good drama. They've written it well to where it's like infuriating and sad and like scandalous all at the same time. Like there's just so much going on and heartbreaking, and yeah, it's
Karen
been wild.
Was asking, what would you think if they paired Sally with Billy if this affair with Chelsea and Adam blows up?
I mean, I think it would be interesting. Sally is so in love with Adam, and but I do feel like there are some similarities there, in their rebelliousness and in their like black sheepness. So it'd be interesting. I don't think she's ever looked Billy's direction, but by any means in that way. So it would be interesting to explore and see. And, I do think that coming off of having that experience with Nick, and he was so mature and grounded and honest, that, Billy has been that through this experience, where he's like, no, we need to talk about this. Something's wrong. It's like a stability, that's been nice, I think, for Sally to have. Also like a little, like, wood chipper chipping away. There's something else. As much as Sally wants to be like, no. I think she just wants so badly to like believe that this is her man and she's in love with him and he would never. But, his famous last words. He would
Well,
never.
I think Billy thinks the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what is so sad, but it's a beautiful tragedy in a way, you know, that they're going through this together. I'm glad that they have each other to lean on. So to answer your question, it'd be interesting, you know. I mean, I'd be open to seeing what it looks like, but it's always what they write, you know. I guess we see it as it comes. We don't know, you know. It's like we get the next script and we're like, oh, that's what's happening. So,
And I think
but
the
he's a great
story
actor.
behind it all, the story behind it with their son, with Connor, is so interesting. You know, like
Yeah,
you've never seen that. The
yeah.
OCD, I've never seen that really done on a show with
I
a
haven't
young,
either.
with a
I'm glad
young.
that they're doing it though.
Yeah, it really is interesting. What comes to mind when I mention these men you've worked with on Y&R? Joshua Morrow.
Oh, what comes to mind him
Yeah, like
specifically?
what's the first thing that pops in your head?
Oh, well, he's a huge jokester, laughing. Like that's my favorite part about him is, you know, how he can make moments just light and fun and human. Even in his work, you know, he's very human when it comes to what he does. He's so natural. Um, yeah, that's one of my favorite parts about him.
Mark
He's
Grossman.
Mark's great. I think he's a fantastic actor. He's rebellious. He's um, in life, but also like in his character. So I think that he has a lot of passion, and that comes across. And I feel like that's been one of my favorite parts about Sally and Adam is like that passion, that fire. His whole like I like your fire, that whole thing that's kind of been the
Yeah.
thread through our relationship. I love that.
Well, that's funny because Joy wrote, Courtney Hope is a fantastic actress. She is knocking her part of Sally out of the ballpark. Just missed the fire that Adam and Sally had with each other. Hope they get it back.
Totally. Yeah, I agree.
Used the same word. She used the same word. What about Jason Thompson? You just mentioned.
Yeah, he's such an intellectual. Like, I love the way he looks at a scene. It's crazy. Like, he will sit down and have a conversation with you and be like, so this is where I'm coming from. This is what I see. This is what, and I love that because I love to do that with scripts too. So it's been fun working with him and having those moments, and then also being able to just like toss it aside when you're, you know, playing and having it just be whatever it is. But he's a great guy, solid.
That's so interesting. You must have to sort of juggle your process with whoever you're working with because everybody has a different process.
Completely. I was just talking with this actually with Missy the other day, 2 days ago on set, because, you know, we don't work with people. Then all of a sudden you're like working with them, you know, out of nowhere. And it's like, and everyone's process is different. Some people love to run lines. Some people don't like to run lines. Some people like to talk about the scene. Some people don't. Some people learn their lines that morning. Godspeed. I don't know how they do it. Some people look at it like a week before, you know, so it is different.
I would turn gray if I did it the day of.
Oh my gosh. I had one day where they gave out new scripts, like the night before they had given revisions, and it was a page and a half. And for some reason, it didn't come up on my email. I didn't get it. And so I got to set during blocking, and they were like, did you get the new pages? And I was like, ugh. And in my, like, I think at that point it had been like maybe 6 years in soaps. I'm like, I've never had that happen. I've seen it happen to people. And I'm always like, I hope that never happens to me. Because I'm pretty good about being like, I'm very invested in what I'm doing. Yeah. But I don't know why. It just didn't come. And I was like, and I remember sitting in my room and being like, well, here's my test. Here's my test. And like, I was fine. I was totally fine. And it was great. And I was like, okay, it's not as, but not making it a habit. I always look at mine like 2-3 days before, or like right when I get it, I scan it. I don't know. I feel like the more, me personally, like the more I look at it, the more I can play. The more I know it and it's like in my body, then I can have fun with it. But yeah, it is different working with different people. You never know.
Yeah, you really, really, really don't. Is there somebody, you know, because you've been there a short time, who would you like to work with who you haven't?
It's so hard because I've worked with so many people. I would love to work with Brighton, who plays Devon.
Yeah.
He's great. I've never really worked with him. I think I had like 1 or 2 scenes with him with like Chloe. I would love to work with Haley Aaron. I've known her for a while, and I think she's great. I think that would be super fun to work with her. I would love to work with Eileen Davidson. I've never really worked with her. She's so good. I
She
loved
was
her.
this recent breakdown was phenomenal.
Great. I mean, how
Phenomenal.
she played the whole DID, I just was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, that's always been a dream of mine to play something like that. Like I know there's a role on Days of Our Lives that is like that. And like, oh my gosh, how iconic. Kate Nancy, who I'm friends with, was like, oh my gosh. Like, or I loved like Orphan Black, although that was a little different because she was a spy, but she played all these different roles. But I'm like, that is such a challenge. I would love that. I remember seeing that girl. I went with a friend of mine to audit an acting class. Probably it was like yeah. And she was there. And in it, in their exercise, they had to be animals. And she had to be a cat. And there was like a whole floor of like 30 actors in their chairs and their whatever animal they pick. And I kid you not, I felt like I was watching a cat. It was the craziest thing I'd ever seen. Like that girl is good. Like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Wow. Michael was asking, what is your memorization process?
I like to absorb it as a memory. So like I love to sit and I go line by line and I love to go through all my senses and see how it resonates within my body, where it resonates. And then I use my imagination to create the world around that line, that sentence, that conversation. If I have to pull memories that have already happened or create new ones. And that's how I work. Cause I don't know. I just feel like for me, my imagination is so important. I'm not one that like uses personal life. I love to just imagine how it would be and like explore what that looks like. And if I have to do research, I do. But yeah,
I'm
I'm
so
one
glad
like,
you asked you that. I'm so glad he asked you that because I loved hearing your take on that. That's
yeah.
amazing. You know, Kristen Doherty, the stage manager, is a dear friend of mine.
Love her. I
She's
love
great,
her.
isn't she?
She's
Give her a
great.
hug. Give her a hug for me. And Vivian Gundiker, the producer, as well. They used to work here in New York, so
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
yeah, they were. Kristen was on Guiding Light with me, and Vivian on As the World Turns with me.
Oh
So
my gosh. I'll tell them you said hi. I
yeah,
love them both. They are
yeah,
both wonderful women.
yeah.
Mostly strong women. I love it.
They are really good.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask, how would you describe Sally today? Like from when she was on B&B to now on YNR? How if somebody sort of like saying, who is Courtney Hope? Who is Sally Spectra?
Um, Today, Sally is a lot more grounded. I think she knows very much so who she is and what she stands for and what she's worth. I don't think she ever really knew that. I think, especially after the loss of Ava, there was a lot of soul searching and she came to that conclusion. Um, but at the same time, she's still got that fire. She's got that determination to make something of herself and to have the career that her great aunt had, because she's yet to really, I mean, she's now coming into that, to have the family she never had, and so and it's always that push and pull between, it's like the dangling carrot, oh, there it is, I'll have it. But my favorite part about her is that she's just tenacious and she just never gives up. She's like a bull, she's gonna charge towards the red flag, but she's a little more calculated and cautious than she used to be. I feel like she used to stumble over her feet as she charged towards it. Now she's a little more strategic about it, but she still charges it.
Sounds like Courtney, tenacious.
Yeah.
Tia and Evangelina both asked the same question. Do you have a story line that you have ever thought of or that you would like to see Sally do?
I would love for them to explore her parents. No one's ever done that, and I just think it would be so interesting, to see what that brings up. Like, does it open wounds? Does it heal her? Does it? Who knows? Like, I feel like the opportunities are endless to see where that goes. That's something I would love. I would love to see that for her, because she doesn't have family. I mean, she's got her grams, but at this point they just FaceTime, and then her sister Coco is off somewhere. So I don't know. I just love to have
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
I love that. You are also quite well known for your roles as Beth Wilder, Jesse Faden, and what I understand was your dream role as the Sith Lord in the video games Quantum Break, Control, and Star Wars: The Old Republic. You were a gamer as a kid, right, Mario?
Yeah. Yeah. I loved my games. My dad had a
What
little TV next to the big TV, so I wouldn't be stuck in my room.
what has it been like, bringing life to these women in games that millions of people watch
It's
or
been it,
play?
it's been a privilege. I didn't really expect to go into the gaming world, and I just had an audition for Quantum Break when I was younger, when I was like 24, 25. And then it thrust me into this whole world that I was like, how did I live without this? Like, everyone in the gaming world is amazing. My whole team at Remedy, which I work with a lot for Quantum Break and Control, and then the little bits in Alan Wake, I just adore them. Sam Lake is a genius. He's brilliant. He's just such a visionary. And everybody else there that works with him, the whole Remedy team, they're great. All of the Clay and Kyle, the writers and the directors, and just everyone. They're great. And so I'm very excited to like be able to have these opportunities because it really came through them. And then just going more into like the other roles, it just was like, oh, how do I explore more of this world? But the gamer fans are so wonderful. They're so fun and they're so different than the soap fans. And but I love it.
But just as passionate.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. And I
Yeah.
love playing games. So it's fun to like be in that world, because you
What
do
is it
remove.
like seeing you come to life on a game?
It's wild. I remember the first time I played Control, I was not very good at. I still am not good at combat. I'm not good at that. I die a lot, and so playing with someone else who's able to like do that was great. But it was funny because I remember halfway through Control, there were moments that I remembered, but then it was like I didn't even feel like I was watching me. Like I was watching Jesse, because also, there's a lot I don't see. I don't see them, rendering and putting together the final look of it. I just go in and I do the mocap and the facial cap and the voiceover. So, it's cool, but it's fun to be a part of it and to like have another way of storytelling.
And so was Star Wars a big deal for you?
Yeah, I was
Growing
really
up?
excited. I love Star Wars, and it was fun to be able to be a Sith Lord. I could like rock the. I had like a little bodysuit that said, "Excuse or don't mind me, I'm a Sith Lord" or whatever, and I wore it, and I felt like I was like, oh, I can wear this now, because I actually was. So that was really fun. That was really cool. It was a smaller part, but I was like, oh my gosh, to be a part of that franchise is like crazy.
And I mean, do you know, out of the ones you've done, is that the biggest one because it's Star Wars? I'm curious, like
The
more.
games, you mean?
Yeah. Do you know
The
if one is?
biggest game, the biggest game that I've done is Control. Well, hold on. It's probably Alan Wake. Alan Wake, because Alan Wake was before Control. But like me being the lead of it was Control. Star Wars, there's a lot of different games. There's like Knights of the Old Republic, and there's so many other ones. So I think mine was the Eternal Throne. And so for me, like being a part of it, it was big in the sense that like I was a part of something that iconic. But as far as like the game at large, I definitely think Alan Wake, because Alan Wake is like iconic and huge. And then Alan Wake 2 was what I was in, and then Control would be the next.
That's wild. I can't imagine just seeing yourself on the screen. You teased in an interview with First for Women. I think that you have a gaming project, a top secret gaming project. Is that still
Secret?
still
Yes.
happening?
Well, actually, at that point in time, it might have been. There is one that is secret, but that one actually might have been Alan Wake. So
Okay.
they had Jesse and Alan Wake, and then I did the 2 DLCs for Alan Wake. One is Jesse, and one is someone else. But yeah.
Paris was asking, what types of Mario games did you play?
Oh my gosh, I loved. I mean, Mario Kart was like a big one. Mario, Super Mario, Super World Mario, like that was like my thing. I just loved I loved Yoshi. He was my favorite. He didn't. He was slower sometimes, but I really liked Yoshi a lot. I just enjoyed like all the games, and like I'm such like a strategist. Like I love to like figure out how to solve things, and so I loved like all the games where you had to like, where they get into like their little battles where you have to like solve to get past Bowser or whatever it was. Like as a kid, like I loved that.
I sadly was never really into them. I would be the one dying all the time.
Yeah, definitely have to go through a learning curve for sure. I know I just tried to play last year The Last of Us, and by the time I got to those like clickers, I just kept dying, and I just said, well, the TV show's coming out, so I'm just gonna wait. Because I was just like dying all the time, that I'm like, I can't get past this guy, and he's scaring me. So, but I liked that game. That was fun. Yeah, I don't know. Now as I've gotten older, I like the story-driven games more than like the combat games.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not a first-person shooter game. I'll watch it, but like watch someone play it. But like for me to play it, I'd rather do the whole like, here's a choice, like go this way or go this way, and or like the horror games, like where it's like
using your brain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's why I'm like, which, this strategic direction. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned in that interview as well about the clothing line with your brother. What kind of clothing line are you putting together?
So it's a mental health, spiritual clothing line. And it's all about, it's called Dear Me, and they're like dedications to yourself. And so when someone's reading it, as they're reading it, it's to themselves as well. So it's for you and for whoever is reading your shirts. And yeah, we were supposed to launch by now, but we brought on a new creative director, and it has totally expanded. So we're hoping in the next month will be our launch. Oh, but awesome. We're excited. Yeah, we have some stuff, and then we have a bunch of new stuff in the works. Like I'm really excited about it. It's been something I've wanted to do since I was younger, was to do some sort of clothing thing. My mom got me a sewing machine when I was like 8. I just love to like create and sew things together. And I went and took a sewing class at like Joanne Fabric. Like I just loved that. And I would make like I remember making underwear. I made pillows. For my parents. Like they had this really long couch. And so it was like a black and white room with purple walls. So I went and got zebra fabric and made like a really long extended, what you would call now like a body pillow, but I made it really nice, and I sewed it and stuffed it, and that was their thing. And so I'd always wanted to do something, and my brother kind of wanted to do it. And then years ago, he called me and he was like, I think I've got it. I think I know what like this should be about, like what we're both into, and like, health and wellness. And he was writing in his journal one day and was like, this is, I think, what it should be. And so then it's just snowballed and expanded from there. So
I love the idea. It's great. It's great. Were you a fan of Project Runway?
Not really. I've seen parts of it, but I'm just not a big reality person. I don't watch much of it. I just
because of the loving to sew and that kind of thing. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I don't do reality either. It's a little different, but that you probably would really love, because it sounds like you love that process.
Yeah, I definitely will have to check it out. It's been really funny, like playing a fashion designer, because it's something that I've always wanted to do. But then also now, like being in it now, when I say what I say, like any of the lines about like, digitizing the designs, or, creating the cutting labels, the hem tags or this or that, like I know what I'm saying because we're dealing with, so it's been kind of this fun full circle thing where I'm like, okay, like I'm actually getting to do something with this.
Well, maybe Sally can wear some of this sometime.
That would be great. That would be fantastic.
Absolutely. Well, before I let you go, I know in late June you took to Instagram to talk about the ups and downs in your life, with the hope that it might help other people. I know that, being vulnerable like that isn't always easy, and I'm sure it did help others. Was it cathartic for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the last several years have been a lot of ups and downs for a lot of different reasons, but a lot of, relationship stuff that I had been through and was getting past it. And, it's so easy to not want to talk about it, and there was a lot of reasons why I didn't want to, for privacy, for, also I was still navigating a lot of stuff. But the more and more I heard stories of people going through similar things, it just made me realize like I would be at a disservice, I think, if I didn't say something, because the people that have been through it that opened up to me greatly helped me. Like I wouldn't be where I am in this moment without their advice and their support and their love. And so, yeah, it was something that I thought, yeah, it was cathartic. Absolutely. I think also because there was, I don't know, everyone on the internet speculates all different sorts of things. And I said, it's not about that. This is just about me basically breaking down and coming out anew, and that other people can do that for whatever reason. People can be broken down for whatever reason, but that doesn't have to be the end. That doesn't have to be who you are anymore if you make that choice. And it's not always an easy choice. There were definitely days where it was hard for me to like get out of bed, get up off the floor, whatever it was. But in the end, I wouldn't trade anything. I wouldn't
truly saying it does help other people. I mean, just like we started at the beginning of this interview, how the people online were talking to each other. I'm sure you must have read tons of messages from other people who have similar stories or whatever story, but or their own journey.
Yeah, and it makes you feel less alone, because in those moments it's isolating. It really is. I mean, especially when you're knocking yourself for so many things, when you're literally like, oh, did I do something? Is it like, what's wrong with me? And then having that, and then having other people. I have a friend going through something similar right now. And I remember the first words that came out of my mouth were like, you did not, like, it's not you, like there's two people in every situation. Like I can admit that, but at the end of the day, it's so easy to, especially as an empath, to put all the blame on yourself. And I just wanted her to know, like, and it's going to come in waves. And so anyway, to answer your question, yes, it was very cathartic. And I just very much so, like, I just wanted people to know that it's possible to stand up again. Because I will say, and then I know we're probably running out on time, but what's her name? Oh my gosh, why am I blanking her name? The girl from The Talk, or not The Talk. Yeah, The Talk. Blonde dancer.
The one who lost her husband?
Yes.
Oh God, I know. Not Allison.
Her name is blanking.
Oh God, I know.
Oh, Amanda Kloots.
Amanda Kloots, yes.
Amanda Kloots said something, and a video came to me a couple years ago that someone posted, and she talked about how going through something similar. This was before her husband, but I think this was from her divorce. And how there were moments where like she couldn't even get up off the floor, but then she'd wake up the next day and go to work with a smile on her face, like everything was okay. And anyway, it was so moving. I watched her say that clip probably 40 times, over and over and over and over and over, because it just was like, okay, I'm not alone. Okay, I'm not alone. And so at the Emmys in December, not this last one, but at the Emmys in December, I actually went up to her and I thanked her because it really, really, really helped me. And so that was part of it too, was I was like, you know what, like maybe, even if it's just one person, like that one person helped me. Maybe if I can be that person for someone else, I want to be.
I'm so glad I asked you, because it is, two things you said. It does take two to tango, no matter what. We all blame ourselves for different things. It's two to tango. And then there are people like Amanda or anybody else online that you might just read something and it affects you. And I'm sure what you wrote affected somebody. So thank you for sharing that, because I know it's not easy, but so much in our own mental health we don't talk about. And I think opening up helps no matter what.
Yeah,
Right?
it
Like you
does.
said, one person, then it was worth it, right?
It's so easy to isolate, and there have been moments throughout my whole life when you go through something, it's like, I don't want to talk about it. I just want to isolate. I don't want to. And now, I got to the point where I got to an age where it was like, well, I don't want to say anything because either I don't fully understand it yet, or I don't want to say the wrong thing, or I don't want to, you're going through a moment of, whatever. And it's like, I would just rather not, because you put it out there, it's vulnerable. People are going to comment on it. Not everyone's going to say nice things. And it's like, okay, that's fine. It's then this wasn't for you. But yeah, for the one person that was,
you got to ignore the noise.
Definitely. Yeah, you have to. Yeah. The one person that said, I needed this today because of A, B, C, and D, totally drowns out the one that's like, I can't believe that you would blah, blah, blah. It's like, whatever, like I'm to a point where it's like, not everyone's going to like me. Not everyone's going to like what I have to say. And that goes for everyone. Like not everyone's your cup of tea. You're not everyone's cup of tea. If we were, this world would be incredibly boring because everyone would be the exact same. And like, it's like, I don't know. So, but yeah, thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, it definitely was. I was nervous, but I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it because
that's part of that process, I think, too, that, you were going to be vulnerable, and vulnerability, I think, makes us all nervous.
Yeah, absolutely. But I know myself well enough now that it didn't matter what anybody else said, especially negative, feedback, because I know my truth. And like, I'm okay with someone not being okay with it. That's okay. You don't have to be, I'm standing, you weren't there the moments when I could barely get up off the ground. And now I'm, basically feel like I'm flying. So it's like, it's fine. You didn't see me crash and burn. I don't care what you think about it. I know where my scars are. It's fine, and like,
absolutely.
I don't know, it's how we have to live, It's like,
well, I will end on 2 comments. Michael says, Courtney, you are a light. And Susan said, that's what made you so brave.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much, Courtney. This was terrific. Such a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This has been great.
Continued success.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Have a great afternoon.
Okay, bye. Bye,
everyone. Bye. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you to Courtney Hope for spending this hour and being so vulnerable and sharing her stories with us. Don't miss Courtney weekdays on The Young and the Restless on CBS at 12:30 Eastern. Join us on Tuesday evening, April 6th at 8 p.m. as we celebrate the killer final season of the award-winning audio soap Forever and a Day with creator Casey Hutchison, some of his creative team and cast, including Candace Mack and Tanya Walker. If you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can do so down below. Turn on the notifications for reminders of all upcoming shows. And if you'd like to stream audio versions, you can search The Locker Room on your favorite podcast app and download them there. Thanks for watching. As always, please stay safe and have a great weekend. I'll see you on Tuesday.